February 11th, 1905, 3:17 a.m., Great Slave Lake, Northwest Territories, temperature minus 47 degrees Celsius. Joseph Beaulieu can't feel his feet. He's been walking for 6 hours, 2,300 steps per kilometer according to his counting, approximately 14 kilometers from where his dog sled went through the ice. The dogs drowned. 3 Malamutes, each weighing 40 kilograms, pulling 180 kilograms of supplies. They broke through in seconds. The ice was supposed to be 90 centimeters thick. It was 12 centimeters. He's 34 years old. Métis freighter, born in Fort Resolution. He's run this ice road 47 times since 1897. Knows every pressure ridge, every thin spot, every dangerous crossing. He marked this section safe yesterday. Temperature was minus 38. Today it's minus 47. But something changed. The ice shifted, and now he's walking in darkness with wet boots that are freezing to his feet. His lantern died an hour ago. Oil froze solid. He can see starlight on ice and nothing else. The nearest shelter is Fort Resolution, 11 kilometers southwest if his navigation is correct. He's betting his life on that compass bearing, betting that hypothermia won't shut down his brain before his body. He doesn't know he's the 7th person this month to go through the ice on what locals are calling Death Highway, the 427-kilometer ice road connecting Fort Resolution to Yellowknife. He doesn't know that by March 1905, the body count will reach 23. He doesn't know this will become the deadliest winter in the history of Canada's northern ice roads. He just knows his feet have stopped hurting, and that means he's dying. The ice road wasn't supposed to kill people. It was supposed to save them. In 1896, gold was discovered at Yellowknife Bay. Not California-scale deposits, but enough to attract 2,500 prospectors and merchants by 1898, the Soror. Problem was access. Summer meant boat transport on Great Slave Lake. Expensive, slow, limited cargo capacity. Winter meant nothing. No boats, no roads. The region was isolated for 8 months per year. The solution was proposed by trader Malcolm McDougall in 1897. Use winter ice. Great Slave Lake freezes to depths exceeding 2 meters in good winters, thick enough to support loaded sleds. Link Fort Resolution to Yellowknife with a marked trail across the ice. Run freight all winter when lake navigation was impossible. The Northwest Mounted Police approved the route in November 1897. First official. Crossing, December 3, 1897. 6 sleds, no casualties. By January 28, the ice road was carrying 40 sleds per week. By 1900, commercial freight companies were running scheduled services. By 1905, the route was transporting 480 tons of cargo annually. Food, mining equipment, medicine, mail. But ice doesn't follow schedules. And 1905 was not a normal winter. The deaths started in January. First victim, Thomas McKay, age 41, Hudson's Bay Company freighter, January 7, 1905. His sled broke through near Burnt Island. Time, 300 finims, 87 kilometers from Fort Resolution. Water temperature, approximately 1 degree Celsius. Survival time in water that cold, 15 to 45 minutes, depending on physical condition and clothing. Thomas was wearing wool coat, fur hat, leather boots. Good for minus 40 air temperature, useless in water. His dogs pulled him out. They were trained to respond to ice breaks. Standard practice for teams working northern routes. Thomas climbed back onto solid ice. He was alive. Wet, but alive. The problem was temperature, minus 4 degrees Celsius. His clothes froze, solid in minutes. Wool coat became rigid shell. Water in his boots turned to ice. He tried to move, couldn't. His clothing had become a prison. His partner, William Chen, found him 4 hours later, still alive, couldn't speak, couldn't move. Core body temperature estimated at 28 degrees Celsius. Severe hypothermia, consciousness fading. William built a fire, tried to warm him. Thomas died at 2:34 p.m., 9 hours after going through the ice. Cause of death, hypothermia complicated by immobilization from frozen clothing. Second victim, time of hundreds, Marie Lafferty, age 28, traveling to Yellowknife to join her husband. January 19, 1905. She was riding in a freight sled driven by Anton Beckering, age 52, experienced driver. The sled broke through on smooth ice. No warning, no visible thin spots. Anton and Marie both went into the water. Anton's dogs pulled the sled back up. Anton climbed out. Marie's coat filled with water, heavy wool, absorbed approximately 8 kilograms of water. The weight pulled her under. Anton tried to reach her, couldn't. She drowned in less than 2 minutes. Body never recovered. Time 1,000 Bambi's and Mr. Third and fourth victims, James Morrison and his son Peter, ages 46 and 17. January 27, 1905. Their sled broke through 34 kilometers from Yellowknife. Both drowned. Dogs survived. The sled and cargo were recovered 2 weeks later through the ice. Bodies never found. By February 1, 1905, 7 people had died on the ice road. The Northwest Mounted Police issued a closure order. No travel until ice conditions improved. The freighters ignored it. They had contracts. Cargo was paid for. Delays meant lost revenue. Companies sent sleds anyway. February brought more deaths. The ice was behaving strangely. Warm currents underneath. Water temperature 2 to 3 degrees Celsius warmer than normal, caused by unknown geological activity beneath the lake. The surface looked solid. Measurements showed adequate thickness. But underneath, the ice was weakening in unpredictable patterns. February 8th, Henri Dubois, age 39, went through the ice, survived, walked to Fort Resolution, lost 8 toes and 3 fingers to frostbite. February 11th, Joseph Beaulieu, the man from our opening, went through the ice, status unknown. February 14th, Anna Kowalski and her 2 children, ages 6 and 9, broke through while traveling with a freight convoy. All 3 drowned. The freight driver, Robert McDonald, jumped in to save them. He drowned too. 4 deaths in 1 incident. If you want to understand why 23 people died on 427 kilometers of ice and how this changed northern transportation forever, hit that like button. It helps us share these forgotten tragedies. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Joseph Beaulieu. He was found on February 12, 1905, at 11:23 a.m. Location, 3.7 kilometers from Fort Resolution. He'd walked 21.3 kilometers total. He'd navigated correctly, almost made it. He died approximately 200 meters from the shoreline, collapsed face down on ice. Estimated time of death, between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m. He'd survived roughly 14 hours after going through the ice. His body was frozen solid. They couldn't bend his limbs to fit him in a casket. They had to wait 3 days for the body to thaw enough for burial. The autopsy, conducted by Dr. Samuel Thompson, the only physician within 400 kilometers, determined cause of death, hypothermia, complicated by exhaustion and dehydration. Joseph's boots had frozen to his feet. His socks were ice. His feet showed severe frostbite with tissue death extending to mid-calf. If he'd survived, he would have lost both legs below the knee. The deaths continued through March. March 3rd, 2 unnamed indigenous guides broke through the ice. No official records beyond mention in NWMP reports. March 7th, Alexander Petrov, age 51, Russian prospector, drowned. March 14th, Michael O'Brien, age 33, Irish freighter, went through the ice, survived initial incident, died of hypothermia while attempting to walk to safety. March 2nd, Sarah Whitmore, age 24, traveling to Yellowknife, broke through the ice, rescued by convoy members, died 3 hours later from hypothermia despite rescue efforts. By March 31st, 1905, the official death toll reached 23. The unofficial toll, including indigenous travelers whose deaths weren't recorded, uncounted prospectors, and people whose bodies were never found, may have been higher. Some historians estimate 31 to 38 deaths. Records from that era didn't comprehensively track indigenous peoples or transient prospectors. The investigation started in April 1905. The Royal Northwest Mounted Police sent Inspector Charles Constantine from Dawson City to investigate. His findings, documented in 47-page report filed May 28, 1905. Ice thickness measurements were misleading. Standard protocol was to drill test holes every 5 kilometers and measure ice depth. If depth exceeded 70 centimeters, ice was considered safe for sled traffic. The 1905 ice met this standard, but the measurements didn't account for underwater currents causing uneven freeze patterns. Some areas had 2-meter ice. Adjacent areas had 8-centimeter ice. The surface looked identical. Warm water intrusion. Geological survey later confirmed unusual geothermal activity beneath Great Slave Lake in winter, 1904 to 1905. Water temperatures 1.5 to 4 degrees warmer than historical average. This prevented uniform freezing, created weak spots that were invisible from surface, increased traffic. The 1905 winter saw 340% more sled traffic than 1904. More weight on ice, more vibrations causing stress fractures, more frequent breaks in ice integrity, inadequate safety equipment. Most freighters carried no emergency supplies for ice break scenarios, no dry clothing, no waterproof containers, no rope for rescue operations. When someone went through ice, rescue options were limited. Inspector Constantine's recommendations: mandatory safety equipment for all ice road travelers, reduced load limits, increased ice thickness requirements, minimum 1 meter, emergency shelter stations every 15 kilometers, and closure of route during temperature fluctuations that might indicate warm currents. The freight companies ignored most recommendations. Too expensive, too slow, would reduce cargo capacity by 40%. They continued operating, but travelers stopped using the route. Word spread. The ice road that killed 23 people in 3 months became known as Death Highway. Alternative routes were developed. Longer, slower, but safer. By winter 1906, traffic on the Great Slave Lake Ice Road had dropped 73%. By 1910, the route was used only during extreme cold when ice was verifiably safe. The families of the dead received minimal compensation. The Hudson's Bay Company paid $50 to $100 per death for company employees, about 3 months' wages. Independent freighters' families received nothing. No insurance existed, no legal requirement for compensation. Deaths were classified as occupational hazard or act of God. Families were left to survive without primary income earners. Marie Lafferty's husband, John, spent 2 years searching for her body. He hired divers in summer 1905 and 1906. They found scattered freight, pieces of sleds, animal remains. Never found Marie. He died in 1908, age 34. Cause of death listed as exhaustion and despair. More likely, suicide. He'd lost everything. Anna Kowalski's husband, Stefan, learned his wife and children died 3 weeks after it happened. Mail traveled slowly. By the time he received the telegram, they'd been dead 21 days. He traveled to Fort Resolution in May 1905, visited the site where they broke through. The ice had melted. There was nothing to see, just water. He stood there for 11 hours. Then walked back to Fort Resolution and never returned to Yellowknife. Abandoned his mining claim. Disappeared from records. Presumed dead somewhere in wilderness. The 23 confirmed dead are buried in various locations. 7 in Fort Resolution Cemetery, 4 in Yellowknife, 3 in Fort Smith. The rest? Unmarked graves, bodies never recovered, burial locations unknown. Most graves have no markers. Wood crosses rotted decades ago. Names forgotten. There's a memorial now, erected in 1987, 82 years after the deaths. Small plaque in Fort Resolution. Lists 19 names. 4 names were lost to history. Deaths recorded but identities unknown. The plaque reads, "In memory of those lost on the ice road, winter 1905, they built the North with their lives." The ice roads still exist. Modern ice roads in Northwest Territories carry thousands of trucks annually. Sophisticated ice monitoring, satellite temperature tracking, ground-penetrating radar, strict load limits, emergency response teams. Deaths still occur, approximately 1 per year across all Canadian ice roads. But nothing like 1905. Nothing like 23 deaths in 3 months on 427 kilometers. Joseph Beaulieu's descendants still live in Fort Resolution. His great-great-granddaughter, Marie Beaulieu, age 47, operates a tour company that includes historical ice road education. She says, "Joseph died 200 meters from shore. He walked 21 kilometers in minus 47 degrees. He almost made it." That's what people need to understand. These weren't stupid people making bad decisions. These were skilled northern travelers doing impossible jobs in impossible conditions. The ice killed them, not their mistakes. Time 1800s. Some things don't fit on memorial plaques. You can't engrave the specific cold that turns wool clothing into frozen prison. You can't memorialize the calculation that made freight companies send people onto deadly ice because contracts mattered more than lives. You can't capture Thomas McKay's last moments, alive but frozen, consciousness fading, unable to speak or move while fire burned 3 meters away. But here's what remains: 427 kilometers of ice that killed 23 people in winter 1905. A route that was supposed to connect communities but became graveyard. A northern transportation system built on bodies of people, time, de 300 steams, whose names we barely remember. Great Slave Lake still freezes every winter. The ice still forms Death Highway's route. Modern roads run parallel now, winter ice roads following almost identical path that Joseph Beaulieu walked on February 11th, 1905. When trucks drive that route today, they're traveling over water that once held bodies. Marie Lafferty, Anna Kowalski and her children, Thomas McKay, 23 others, all down there somewhere, preserved in cold, waiting in water. Joseph Beaulieu died 200 meters from safety. He'd survived 14 hours, walked 21.3 kilometers. Time Nundrums made every correct navigation decision, did everything right, and died anyway because minus 47 degrees doesn't care about skill or determination or how close you are to safety. They found his compass in his pocket, still working, bearing 237 degrees southwest, pointed directly at Fort Resolution. He'd navigated perfectly, just ran out of time.